get to know each other and spend time with each other. So I'm inviting us to have that kind of conversation today. What are the things that are going on for us in the as a party, as people, and the work we do, and how do we build the Green Party for the party to be the party that we need and want for it to be for now and the future. I think those are important things to sort of talk about. And so if those of you that are willing to come on camera, it would be great to come on so we could just say hi to a real person and say hello really quickly. And if you all wouldn't mind, we do a very, very, very quick, no nonsense sort of just, if you can come on camera, say hello, say your name and where you're from. And that's it, just your name and where you're from, just so we get a sense of that from everybody, because I like hearing where people are from. So I'm Daryl. And as Margaret Elizabeth said, I am from Washington. I am living in Washington, D.C. And so I'll just go according to the faces that I see. Joseph Murray.
And everyone, if you get called on, please go ahead and unmute yourself. You should be able to do so.
And yep. Joseph, you're still on mute. Okay, we'll come back to you. Amy Beck Jones. Thanks. Can you all just try to unmute yourselves and see if, so Jazz, some people are saying they can't unmute. Is that something we can control, Margaret Elizabeth?
It is. I have allowed all participants to unmute themselves, so they should be able to, and I do not know why they cannot. But I can unmute people, I think.
There we go. You did it. Thank you. Okay. Hi, Amy from Arizona Green Party, also Green Party, Maricopa County.
Awesome. Justin Paglino.
Oh, hi, I'm Justin Paglino. I'm a co-chair of the Connecticut Green Party and chair of the Greater New Haven Green Party. And I'm very excited for this weekend and all the discussions we'll be having.
Thanks. So if you all are still having trouble unmuting, you might have to go out and come back in. I'm not sure if sometimes that fixes any glitches that might be there, but people seem to be able to do it. So hopefully by the time we get to you, you'll be okay. Diane Harrison.
There we go. I'll tell you what it does is when you call on me, it says the host would like you to unmute, but when you try to do it ahead of time, it says the host is not allowing you to unmute. So just let you know, because I tried it ahead of time when you said, go ahead, try it. Anyway, I'm Diane Harrison from Santa Clara County, California. Thanks.
Rick. There you go.
Oh, okay. Now it's Rick Greenblatt, San Diego, California.
Awesome. Sarah Dillon.
Hi there. My name is Sarah Dillon. I'm a National Committee delegate from the Indiana Green Party. I live in Terre Haute, Indiana.
Great. Brett.
Brett Clark from Florida. I'm on the International Committee as a delegate from Florida.
Mohammed.
Ahmed Salmasi from Worcester, Massachusetts.
Great. John.
Good morning. I'm John Proctor from the state of Mississippi, and I'm a city alderman here.
Oh, all right. Justin.
Hi, I'm Justin Weil. I am from Madison County, Alabama.
Awesome. Laura.
Hello, I'm Laura Potts. I'm the co-chair of the Green Party of Florida. I'm on the Lavender Caucus. I'm on the Banking and Monetary Reform Caucus and observer, also on the International Committee as an observer. I am also in the Global Greens Women's Network as an observer, and on the Global Greens LGBTQIA+ network.
Great. That's awesome. Just remember, everyone, we just want your name and where you're from. But thank you, Laura. That's great information. Eddie.
Yes, can you hear me? Okay, I think your audio is going through. Yes, Eddie Espinosa here from the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. Go Greens.
Rita. Thank you, Eddie. Go ahead, Rita. You're unmuted.
No, I'm Rita Jacobs from Michigan and co-chair of the Banking and Monetary Reform Committee.
It is good to see you face to face, Rita. We've been on emails for years, and I don't know that I've ever seen your face. So it's good to see you. And if we have, it was so long ago, but it's good to see you. Jasmine.
I'm Jasmine Sherman, located today in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Hello, Jasmine. Mike H.
Mike Heishman, Boston.
Awesome. Maureen.
Oh, hi, Mike, a fellow Massachusetts, and this is Maureen from Southbridge, Mass. And there was somebody from Worcester. Please reach out to me.
Okay.
Thanks.
Steve, sorry.
I guess you mean me.
Yes, Steve Sowen.
I'm from the Green Party of Florida, Miami, live in Miami, and I'm a member of the Banking and Monetary Reform Committee.
Great. Michaela.
Hi, I am
Hi.
Michaela. I'm from Aubrey, Texas.
Texas.
Yeah.
Elizabeth.
I am Elizabeth Green from the unceded territory of the Tongva people in Southern California.
Awesome. Patrick. Well, you moved. Craig.
Hey everyone, Craig Cayetano, Green Party, New Jersey, also one of your steering committee.
Thanks. Patrick?
Yes, sorry about that. Patrick from Connecticut, Green Party. I am the state treasurer and also treasurer for the Greater New Haven Green Party chapter.
Awesome. Wayne. Uh-oh, Wayne, you went back on mute.
This is Wayne Rollins. I'm from Broward County, Florida.
Great. Diane. Diane Blaze. Okay, Sharon Janice. Sharon, you're still on mute. And we can't see you. Your camera's up too high.
Okay. Yeah, I'll tilt my computer. I'm Sharon Janice and I'm in Largo, Florida.
Okay. And Patricia.
Hi, Patricia C. Benner Saavedra from the Greater New Haven chapter, and I'm
Awesome.
secretary. So,
Let's see. If you guys, when you come on and off, it moves you. So I'm making sure if I miss you, I'll come back to you. Eddie, Vita, Jasmine, ASC.
Andy Cagle from North Carolina. Well, I can't hear me very well. So.
No, it wasn't bad. We can hear you. Thanks, Andy. Sonia.
Hi, I'm Sonia from Alameda County in California.
Oh, wow. Okay. John Fortuin.
Hi, I'm from Athens, Georgia.
Athens, Georgia. Wow. Darren.
Yeah, I'm Darren Thompson, aka ADC, and I'm from Alberta, Canada.
Alberta county?
Alberta, Canada.
Canada. Well, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Our member from the north. Welcome. Whitney.
Hi, I'm Whitney and I live in Lincoln, Illinois.
Nice to meet you. Let's see. Lisa. Lisa Kanar.
There we go. I'm unmuted. I live in Seattle and I'm the treasurer of the Green Party of Washington State.
Awesome. Welcome. And we have another person joining us, Robin Lee Vargas, I think it is. We are just introducing ourselves, our names, and where we're from.
Hi, Robin Vargas from the Alamo area in Texas near McAllen, running for the Green Party, still don't know what as. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. So I'm excited that we have at least a couple of our other steering committee members here to witness your comments and your thoughts about the Green Party and where we go from here for now in the future. So I want to open it up a little bit. And so there may be things that have happened within the party that people want to talk about or need to talk about or want to get clear about. And so we're open to having that conversation today. This is not intended to solve necessarily anything, but it is intended to hear from all of us and share a vision of what we like to see the party becoming. And my intention is to take the comments and information that come from you and turn that back into something that we might be able to make actionable, depending on what we talk about. Some of it might just be people want to vent and say what happened and talk about it. But one of the things that I know recently, for those of you that may not have been with us very long, recently we have dealt with some things internal within the party around transphobia going on in the party. We have, and we've been trying to root that out wherever we can. It also resulted in the loss of some state parties in terms of people walking away and others being removed. And we're working to rebuild those state parties as well. From some of that work, we have been working to build and rebuild within the National Black Caucus as well. The Latinx Caucus has been working to build and get stronger as well. The Women's Caucus has been going great for a long time, well, generally great for a long time. And the Young Eco-Socialists, I think, is one of the shining stars of the work that we've been doing in the Green Party lately, and their way of organizing and working within with their network of young Greens. I think it's been phenomenal. And the Lavender Caucus, of course, I think is probably one of the most well-organized caucuses that I've been able to be a part of and to experience in the way in which they do things. I am borrowing things from them in the Black Caucus, slowly but surely. So there's lots of stuff that's been going on. So Brett asked the question, what happened with the Georgia Greens? And so basically what happened with the Georgia Greens is in a very, very short version of this very long story, they adopted a resolution that came from outside of the US and made it a part of their platform that was around women's and children's sex-based rights. And in that document and in the declaration that they had made, it had some very, very transphobic language and behaviors written into it. And we were very concerned, many people were very concerned about their adopting that. And there were many, many attempts to get them to clarify what they meant by adopting it and how those parts that were in there differed with the National Party's platform on inclusion. And it got to a place where we were unable to find common ground in those areas, and people were unwilling to dial back on the things in that document and in that declaration that were very, very transphobic, and that many things that are happening in other parts of the world aren't happening in the US. So there are things about that were just not accurate and were not well representing what's going on in the US. So ultimately it led to a decision or proposal to remove the Green Party to disaffiliate because they would not, the Georgia Green Party disaffiliate, and the national body voted to disaffiliate as a result of the long history of things that went on for probably a couple of years and or close to it for us trying to find a way out of that potential eventuality. And so that's in general what happened. Anyone else want to chime in on that and correct any things that I might have misrepresented or not said clearly enough? Brett, did you have any, did that give you a good picture, Brett?
All right, I'm sorry for the delay. You have to, as someone pointed out, you have to unmute and then get permission to talk and that kind of stuff. So I didn't really, I saw on the website, there was some mention about what was happening in Georgia. When I was doing some research for the Florida party on what we need to do to comply with national rules. And Georgia apparently did not. And then I'm wondering, how far does that go? Because in Florida, a socialist message does not play well, and it is not going to be something that I personally can support, or that I would be able to recruit people into, especially in my local community, which is very, there's some Sarah Palin bumper stickers and stuff like that. I'm wondering if we would be able, or any state would be able to not promote a socialist or left-leaning agenda. And just as another point, the Forward Party is, I think they're making some inroads, and Andrew Yang took a idea that originated with the Greens, which is we're neither left nor right, but forward. And he seems to be using that to great effect. So what do you, let's throw it out there.
That, beautiful, great questions. And I think it's a lot of conversation. One of the things that we are as a national party is we are a confederation of state parties and caucuses. And so we don't necessarily tell every state and every caucus what they have to do and how they have to do it. Where we draw the line, I believe, and how this is the first time this has ever happened in this way. And I think where we begin to draw the line is when the state party or a caucus is saying things that goes against the platform that we have all agreed to and for our 10 key values and our 4 pillars. And so in the case of Georgia, our trans siblings have the right to exist, to self-determine, to be represented, to be respected as they identify and for who they are, and basic human rights that everyone else is entitled to, and to not be ostracized and demonized and put, all those things that we don't want to have happen. So we don't want anyone creating language that does that. So if there were racist language in a state party's constitution or a state party's platform, we would expect the state party to adjust that and to work with us to find a way to clean up that language so that the racist portions are not present and not there, and to work on what that means and why it was there even in the first place. Sometimes it's not just that the language goes away, but if the language goes away, but the behavior that led to that language and the attitudes are still there, you don't need the language to enact it, right? We know that around the country all as it is. So I think that the fact that you may not promote a largely socialist agenda or items in the work that you do in Florida, I don't know that in and of itself is problematic in terms of your affiliation. I think as long as you aren't saying things, this is my opinion, of course, not things that you're not saying things that are antithetical to our actual platform. So again, the platform, the way I've always explained it, is a consensus document. We came to consensus on some things, and there are people that differed and may have gotten outvoted on things that are in the platform and things that are not in the platform that others would like to see there. And the platform changes. It's not something that stays the same all the time. So there are parts of it that many of us are going to champion big time, and other parts that we say less about or nothing about, that we either don't understand or don't relate to us or aren't relevant in our area at least at that time in our perspective. So yeah, we're not dictating what you have to say and how to say it. We just don't want you saying things that are not accurate as a national voice of what we stand for.
Okay, and one more, and I don't want to take up everyone's time too much, but I had a friend from New Jersey, and she's very conservative, more like evangelical even. And I was telling her about the Green Party and what we stand for and so on and so forth. And then she made the comment, well, I'm okay as long as the word liberty is there, and that's a concept that is emphasized or at least mentioned. And then I said, oh yeah, liberty. And then I looked and I don't see that in the 4 pillars or the 10 planks. So and then I'm like, gee, I think that is that a problem? Should there be more balance between civil liberties of the individual and an agenda that is more aggressive with government action? And then I'll be quiet.
Good question. We'll throw it out to the room. What do you all think? Should there be more balance? Is that something that we need to consider? You all are coming from different states and caucuses where you can bring things to that. And Amy, we're going to come back to your comment also, but and thank you for putting that in the chat. And we're going to look at some of these things you all are saying in the chat too. So yeah, Brett's question. Go ahead, Craig.
So yeah, I when I hear, and I'm in a small town in New Jersey, and I have a very Catholic religious base here, I would say, and I always say it's community, and I position towards community more than towards liberty, and I emphasize that point. And if I really kind of get a vibe with a person, I can kind of throw it in there, and if they're technically Jesus was a socialist, I could throw it as a joke if I've already made a little rapport with somebody. But I'm not campaigning for my town council seat saying I'm a socialist, even though everybody here should know me by now that I proclaim to be a socialist. I take out parts of the platform. I take out my the values and pillars that I need to run in my local community, and I apply my personal beliefs in the way I see fit. And I think there's ways to convey that message and what we can bring as a whole for everybody, and kind of a different approach. And I don't think we have to be afraid of it. And I understand you mentioned about Forward Party. I have friends that are involved with that. And sadly, it's Christine Todd Whitman, who was a terrible governor here in New Jersey. And she's done some vile things, and he's aligned himself with some really bad people. I don't prescribe to that, but we always got to look at it this way. The people that are getting roped in, or the volunteers, are just innocent people, regular people like all of us. And we still just got to keep that olive branch, that bridge to them, and hopefully show them the light. And we do our work, we organize our way, we run candidates, so we hopefully win some seats. And then hopefully those people will just migrate over naturally. But yeah, I try to keep always my guard up with some of these other orgs. I've dealt with MPP and People's Party in the past, and obviously Forward as well. But the people on a one-to-one level, if you have normal conversations and connect, I think you'll have an easier way of approaching them. Over.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
A few comments. My understanding from is that we decided a couple years ago that the Green Party is an anti-capitalist party, but we never decided that we're an eco-socialist party. I believe eco-socialism is a very powerful tendency within the party, but we haven't defined ourselves that way. And I know there's a lot of people in the party who don't agree with that perspective. Question. Thanks for addressing transphobia and what happened with Georgia. How did the party deal with states that opposed the 2020 presidential ticket? Especially one state endorsed, I think, Jesse Ventura. One of the things that I've been a member of the Green Rainbow Party since 2002, And one of the things I've seen locally and nationally is the disagreement of whether the Green Party is an electoral party primarily or a movement party. I believe it's essential that we be both. The presidential campaign in the past has been a big opportunity to grow our party nationally and locally. And it also has been a shit show where we tore each other apart. I'm praying that 2024 will be a tremendous opportunity. I am excited about Cornell West. However, we have to treat fairly all the candidates because we don't want to have another shit show. Just wanted to express myself. Over.
So thank you. And we are on the same page with the anti-shit show behavior. So I will say this, so that the party did have a proposal and it did adopt language regarding eco-socialism several years ago. So we did adopt some language, and I say that we are also an eco-socialist party. I don't know that, and I don't remember more than that, other than that it's fully defined in terms of what that means and how we actualize that. But I do know that we did add some language declaring that that is a framework from which we operate. But it doesn't, I don't think we define how in which we enact those operations and what that really means. And maybe my other co-chairs can chime in if they recall, or any delegates that are here when that was done may recall some of that. In regards to your question about what states did, what we did with states that had not, there was a lot of conversation around that. And there were even conversations about the possibility of some disaffiliations. But in the case of one of our state parties, one state party left as a result of the threats to be disaffiliated. And I think that that was the impetus for it. And they felt that there was a significant number of folks gunning for them to be disaffiliated because of that. And we did disaffiliate one state, Alaska, for their stance on how they dealt with the presidential election, and other states where the nominee did not appear on the ballot. There are lots of different reasons why that may not have occurred, and I think no further action was taken against other states. The one state left, Rhode Island, and Alaska was disaffiliated. And we're still working to rebuild in those three states that have left us or been disaffiliated. We're still working to rebuild in all of those areas. We're going to take just a couple more comments on this, and I want to shift us a little bit more. We're going to talk about some things you guys said in the chat. So Justin, I have two Justins. So Justin P, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to address Brett's bringing up the question of liberty and freedom, and I think it's interesting. There are different kinds of you can specify different kinds of freedom and liberties. In the platform, in the chat, I put links to the section on civil liberties, which, where I think we talk about, prohibition of government spying in violation of the Fourth Amendment and things like that. But we go into a lot of detail there. In terms of, there's a plank on religious freedom. I have a link to that. And then also I found a part of the platform that is related to freedom of speech. So that's just a quick search of the platform that I did just now, looking for issues that address freedom. I'm curious if are those the types of freedom that you're talking about, that you're interested in, or if there are other types of freedom that you feel are not addressed. But you can also just check out those links and see if they address your concerns and issues. That's all.
Yeah, thank you. Justin with no last name.
Yeah, I noticed there isn't anything in the party that says they're against corruption. Especially in the South, most states are very, very corrupt. Is there something that could be added to that?
Say that one more time. I lost a piece of what you were saying. I didn't track it.
Yeah, I was just asking, there's nothing in the party platform that says anti-corruption. In the South, especially in my state, Alabama, corruption is very, very rampant and widespread. Is there something that could be added to the platform for that?
Great question. So I think, again, a lot of these things, the question of liberty, the question of corruption, these are all things that sure could be added in some way. I think your state or your caucus would need to look through our existing platform and identify places where the change would need to occur. And I believe that there is going to be, if we haven't already completed it, I don't think we have, a process where there'll be some additional amendments to the platform lead before we get to the 2024 presidential nomination. Because I think, if I remember correctly, it only happens once every 4 years. But I believe that at that time, we will adopt a new platform and becomes a platform for the next few years with other amendments that may happen in between. And I believe, and I'm on the platform committee, and I'm sorry, I've been there forever, and I just don't remember the process. I just know what I have to do when it comes up. But we will be adopting a new platform. And so there are ways that those things can be added, and they would need to be suggested. And your delegates should be following on the national list the information that comes out from the platform committee, or you can go on the website and email the co-chairs of the platform committee and ask when the next amendment process is going to begin and what the timelines are. And they should be able to at least share some of that with you as well. Now, this question of consensus came up, and it made me think also about the idea that a lot of the ways in which we operate in the US come from a very Eurocentric perspective, and that they do not necessarily follow perspectives that Indigenous folks and folks of color, particularly BIPOC folk, may be using from their communities in the ways in which they naturally may have found ways to work as a community. And so it would be interesting for us to look more into that. I know that I got a call from Oregon State for their state party coming up, and they've adopted a process to deal with coming to decisions together that is hinging on some Indigenous community perspectives from the region. I think it's from the region up there. And so I'm curious to find out more about what they've adopted, or at least what they're proposing to be adopted as their process to how to work through things when they have different sets of people who differ on the subjects and on the issues that we're facing. So I think it's important, but consensus can be messy, but it also can mean that we don't have consensus, so we don't do something. And until we can get to consensus, it may not be the crisis that we think it is, right? Because if it's really a crisis, we'll find a way to get to what is the best way for us to work. That's a philosophy about consensus. Not everyone holds that philosophy, right? And so some people will say, I've got a blocking concern, and then force a vote, which takes us out of the consensus model into the traditional voting model. So I think sometimes we get impatient with consensus. We need to get a decision. We need to do it, when consensus means it's going to maybe take a little longer. We need to think about these things more deeply, have more conversation with each other, find ways, places where we can, the nuances of place where we agree more than we differ, to be able to get to a place of consensus. And some of us sometimes want it now. And so we block, or we just demand a regular vote. And then we get more fracturing and splintering, I think, when it happens so quickly. But that's just my observation. But other thoughts on consensus that you all are asking about, and I'm seeing some things coming up about liberty and conservatism. We can talk about that a bit as well. But consensus, thoughts, questions about consensus, how we're using it, how it works, doesn't work. Any recommendations on what we might do to make it better within the party? Elizabeth.
Okay. Well, if everybody had to cite their opinion with some kind of authority, instead of it just being, well, I feel like this and it's all about what I want, then we could really accelerate the pace of the consensus process. Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk about that some too. Nissen. Did I say it correctly, Nissen?
Actually, it's Nissan, like the car.
Nissan. Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to assume that it wasn't the car, but and not be offensive by saying it that way. But okay, go ahead. You're on mute again, Nissan. Go ahead, Nissan.
Hello? Hello? No,
Yeah, go ahead.
it was saying the host wouldn't let me unmute for some reason.
Okay.
Anyway, so what I've noticed in the different groups I've been in political groups I've been in reaching consensus, I've seen two particular problems that one is people wanting to have an opinion without actually understanding or doing the work in what is actually being said. So that tends to be where any conversation or get anywhere. That there's different ways we have handled those people in the past, but I don't have I don't know how you would believe that what you think a solution with that would be. And the second thing I've noticed in reaching consensus is that we used a governance structure known as sociocracy that was all about consensus building. And we know there's different levels of consensus as well. There's 3 levels of consensus that we've seen. There's people that are gung-ho for it. There's people that be like, I'm okay with it. And then there's people that are like, nah, I can't do that at all. So you got somebody with no resistance, somebody with some resistance, and somebody that's completely resistant. So it seems like a consensus is not always a straightforward yes or no binary either. So
right, it usually isn't, and a lot of our platforms have just barely passed. Some of them didn't pass, and then they come back a couple of rounds, and eventually they do pass or they don't. Sometimes they win just because we ended up having to vote on them, right? So we just had sometimes 1 vote difference, right? Which is not necessarily something that you want to go out and hang your hat on when you're talking about it, when half the party maybe doesn't necessarily agree, but it won by a vote, right? So it leaves room for people to go back and forth with, we want to change our mind again, and we're going to put another proposal out to change it again and go back and forth. But that's why I like the idea of the consensus conversations happening before you get to a vote, so that you get to the best possible perspective that most of us can live with and agree with and work towards. Patricia.
Yeah, and
go ahead, Nissan, go ahead.
Yeah, but then again, the other problem we have is, the conversation always changes with whoever's in the room. And I've been in a lot of meetings that, a lot of people just come and go often in these things. And so so you have one time where like the group convenes, because it's hard getting the information and idea from the group as a whole. Because when doing such a large group, it's hard to get everybody's on mind, especially when they don't participate on a constant level. So that is also a thing to figure out. Like, even we have the consensus conversation, it's like, okay, if we reach consensus today, right? What is that, like, with how many reporting? Like 50% of the party reporting? Is that like 98% with party reporting? Like, and what's the deadline of that? And what would happen when people like dislike a decision and then they just leave? So it's like, well, now the percentage is higher, but the amount of people that actually agree is actually lower. Like, you see, like,
those are all challenges I think we have. One of the things that I found, and we'll get to some of the other hands that are up, one of the things that I have found also is that even though we can have these discussions and try to come to consensus, the National Party delegates are a lot more, it's kind of like the difference between the House and the Senate in some ways, that the Senate is a lot more reluctant rather, to make sweeping changes beyond what's been talked about in the larger body. So we will have discussions, and that moves the needle to some degree. And then when we vote, if it's not enough, I found in a lot of cases, if there's not enough consensus, the National Party ends up not supporting something that's being put forward, even though even if there could have been a number of people voting differently. So there tends to be a check and balance on that to some degree. So in other words, the National Committee is not subject to the whim of a few. If there's a sense that there needs to be a change, I think the National Party has done that, but where there hasn't been a sense of a major shift in the work of the party, we haven't made those decisions. And I'm just hopeful that that's been what's working out. But again, you point out some challenges and flaws to that as well. Patricia.
Oops. Hi. So here's my thing. It seems to me that consensus can work, but it's not always guaranteed to work. Okay. Getting away from does it work in large or small? That's kind of irrelevant. What's important is it going to work in a particular situation? And if it doesn't, as Justin Paglino says, in our group, we have a modified consensus where if we can't come to consensus, we'll vote. But it occurred to me while I was listening to people that we could also do a kind of a modified ranked choice voting when it doesn't work. So you list down all of the ideas, all of the things that people are, saying, I don't like this and here's why, I don't like this and here's another, what can we do about this? What can we do? We have A, B, and C, and you can rank choice vote it, which, if you can't come to a consensus, maybe that's a way to go rather than make it just yes or no. And I know that as human beings, we always want things to be two-sided, but if you think of a cube has 6 sides. It's 3-dimensional. We don't have to always just think yes or no.
I think that's a brilliant, I think, Patricia, it's a brilliant idea. I don't know if it's been brought up before, but I think a lot of times the proposals that we bring to the floor, there are many other perspectives and sides that don't always get talked about as much. And some proposals are super long and it's hard to have 500 different versions of the thing. But I think your idea is a good one. There may be 2 or 3 or 4 different ways that we could say this. Let's vote on what we think it should say and how we should go. I like that idea.
And if you have several people who have very similar ideas, they can come to a consensus on their idea, and that, narrows it down even more.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to talk about that. Yeah. Diane.
There we go. I would agree with much of what Patricia just said. First of all, here in Santa Clara County, we have a small group, and we tend to, the consensus works really well. And sometimes when it doesn't necessarily, like, for example, if we're looking at ballot measures for the state and we want to figure out what do we want to endorse, what we want to oppose, sometimes we'll go with no position. If a few people are supporting it, a few people are opposing it, instead of arguing endlessly, we just say, okay, no position. So that is a third option. So again, I echo what Patricia just said. And then also in the state, we do use the ranked choice voting. They call it modified consensus, as several people have pointed out in the chat. And when we do vote on things, it is always ranked choice. So she's right on. It's being done now. It's not even just, it's a great idea and it's being done now. So I'm endorsing that. Thank you.
Deborah.
Hi, how you doing? I'm sorry I came a little bit late. I don't know if you covered this, but I want to know what decisions, right, the steering committee, national committee does that they make that they decide that steering committee has to make a decision, and the decision that has to have a consensus of all the national delegates. That like, for example, when you hire someone, I'm thinking about, like, a few years back, we had a problem that the steering committee made a decision to hire a spokesperson for the Green Party, and there was a lot of disagreement, and there was a lot of infighting because of that. So what exactly, what are the decisions that is specifically that the steering committee makes, and specifically what goes out for a vote or consensus of the other national committee members?
Okay, great question. So the steering committee are elected by the national body to be their administrative arm of the party, meaning that we manage the finances and the staff and the day-to-day operations of the party. We do not decide the direction of the party, the platform, the languaging. What we will agree to as a steering committee, as a smaller body, is what messages may go out in the media along with the media committee. So the steering committee members will approve a message that's going out from the media committee, because we manage, we assist the committees in operating, right? And so we have liaisons who serve with each committee. Generally speaking, right now we're looking at changing that process, but we are there to lend support administratively to our committees and to help them and jumpstart them if they get stuck, right, to help them move through their processes. So if the steering committee makes a decision to do something, the national body, which elects them, has the right to say, we don't, you shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't have said that. That should have been something that should have come back to us to make a decision about. You've overstepped. That's not administrative. That's policy. That's something. It's procedural. That's something that's not administrative. In theory, is what they're saying, right? The reality is, steering committee may do something, and someone doesn't like it, even a steering committee member, they can then go back to their state and have their state put a proposal to have us undo what we do. And it puts us in that quagmire. That's that place someone else said, consensus having spin around in circles. But it is the process that we have. So the national committee has the ability to override and check the work of the steering committee that it elects. And so the national body is responsible for the voice of the party. It is made up of the delegates from across all of our member states and caucuses, so that they are meant to be going back to their respective places, sharing what's going on, getting feedback and bringing that back to the national and making decisions based on what is going on in the place that they're representing. So that's kind of how that information should flow. It may or may not always work that way. A lot of times we have delegates that are delegates in the state, doesn't have very many meetings. Nobody asks anybody, nobody asks the state voters, the green folks that may be in that area, what they think about the issue. There may not be any regular forums to talk about it. And sometimes the things on the national list are moving really fast. And when there's a lot, like with the platform, there'll be a lot of things happening all at the same time, and people may not be able to take all that back. What I've always done as a delegate from DC is I know what DC, and as a chair there, I know what DC basically agrees to and wants, and what our vision is in terms of what we'd like to see happen at the local and the national level. And so when issues come up, I'm voting usually in alignment with what I know my state, DC, which I will call a state, would want. And when I'm not sure, I'll ask some of my steering committee members and others, but generally that's how I do it. I know other folks like the Lavenders, sometimes you go back, the Lavender Caucus, they'll go back, they'll bring forward the things, and they'll even have a vote, an internal vote of the caucus on things that are going on in the national. We've done something similar with the National Black Caucus when there's been time in between our meetings to share, here's what's going on, and we really need to know what you all think about this, right? And sometimes that works in our favor, sometimes it doesn't. It also led us to being in a sort of splintered on some issues more recently. And so we're still working to repair from some of that splintering, but it's the process that we have. Deborah, does that answer that at least a little bit for you?
Yeah, it does. It does answer a little bit. I'm thinking about was it a couple of years ago that we had or 3 years ago, we had a big fight on Twitter with someone the steering committee hired, and then everyone else were angry because they hired this person,
Well, the steering committee at that time had they had agreed to a contract with some people that were going to work on some things around social media for us, who they did a dim exit, but some of the members of the party felt that their dim exit wasn't strong enough. I'm paraphrasing really poorly right now, and felt that their brand, the couple that were going to do this, that their brand was so heavily tied to something that we were not, that we felt that some people felt they could not represent us well, and that being associated with them would not put us in a good light. So that's how that came up. And they also kind of felt like that the steering committee, before entering into such a contract, should have asked the national body about that. I don't know that that question is actually answered by that vote. I think what that vote did was say, we're not doing that contract, but I don't think that the question about whether or not the steering committee should have done that, I don't think that that was answered with that decision. So
Yeah, I
it's
just
still
gotta make
open.
sure that doesn't happen again. Is there a procedure so it doesn't happen again? You know, that
Not
we
really.
don't have like a public blowout that is taken care of internally, you know?
Not really. I think what we have to do, and that's why I'm having this session with you all to say,
Yeah.
what do you want to see? And so if that's something that is a way to come out of this, how do we do things? How do we clean up the way we do things internally so that it doesn't blow up externally on us and make us look really bad?
Yeah.
I think that's important because some folks were tweeting about some things, and
Yeah.
and we can't control individual people and what they're tweeting, but I
Yeah.
think people have to think, is this tweet going to help us or hurt us? It's bigger than my personal opinion right now. Do I need to do this? Do I need to do this in a public way that can't be undone once, even if you take it down, it's never really down. It's never really gone. It's always out there somewhere. You can find it. Somebody took a screenshot. Somebody will have tweeted it, shared it, and it'll show up again. Let's
Hey,
tell you, we're
everyone.
running close on time.
Yes.
And so I've got Elizabeth and this Nissan. I think I'm gonna go to Joseph first because he hasn't said anything. And if you all want to shoot your things into the chat, and we'll come back to you if we can in a moment. Joseph. Joseph? Uh-oh. He's gone.
I think we lost Joseph.
Yeah. So what I want to say in the last couple minutes that we have here is thank you all for sharing your thoughts and ideas. Clearly, this is a longer conversation, and I'm hoping that those of you that joined us here today, if you don't mind putting your email in the chat before you go, because what we may be able to do, all this is being recorded, and I'll get the chat to it, and we'll be able to reach out to you, and maybe we can form an additional conversation and have another Zoom meeting outside of the annual meeting where we can talk more about some of these things that are important to us, talking about ecology, and do we talk about it enough? Maybe not. Maureen says we need to talk about ecology more and maybe less on social issues. Although she will say that the latter is important, right? So that's important. There's lots of things, do some conversation about liberty and how we play that out in our information and in our work there. There was a comment that was said earlier about fairness for our nominees for the presidential nomination. And I just want to be really clear that there are many of us who are observing and making sure that we are working to keep the process fair and equitable to everyone that is involved. And so I encourage you, if you are one of those candidates, Jasmine and others, if you're working with a candidate who feels like something doesn't feel right to them or that they're not getting a response they need, please reach out to any of us. You can reach out to me or others and say, hey, I've got a concern. Let us help you work through that concern before it becomes a big, huge issue. What I will say publicly is that I did some research during the last presidential nomination period because there were concerns about the fairness of the process. And I'm also chair of the DRC, which is the Dispute Resolution Committee. So in that work, I talked to lots of folks and looked around and looked at what happened. And I will say that the national party as a whole did not do anything that would not be appropriate that the national party should do in regards to that nomination period. However, I will say that there were people in campaigns who were able to move around loopholes and do things that gave the appearance of problems where it was not really true that we had a problem. It's the appearance of. So if, for instance, I'll give you an example. If you decided that you knew you might run, so you managed to find a whole bunch of people who you could get on the coordinating campaign committee, right? Who are from all across the country, who would then support your request for funds for your campaign. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But when everybody found out that all the people on the campaign had been contributors to you or supporters of you, they say, well, that was unfair. It it'll give the appearance of being unfair, but legally it wasn't unfair, right? And I'm trying to use an example of something that didn't happen and won't happen so that it's clear about how that might play itself out. So if you can get so that's the whole thing, is what we're working now is to monitor and make sure that we don't allow people to be in places that that will give the appearance of an unfair advantage of one candidate over the other. And we are also trying to make sure that we don't do things. And when we make a mistake, we should, I think, drop our ego, apologize for the mistake, correct the problem and move on, versus digging our heels in and saying, well, it's no, it's not that. Even though it's not what the person is saying, it feels like that, it looks like that to them. Let's acknowledge that it looks that way, acknowledge that it feels that way, and then say, but here's what it really is, and let us do the work to fix the perceptions, right? Hi, Lou, good to see you. So yeah, there's a lot of work. We hope that you all will go back to your states and your caucuses, that you will be champions for the work that we do as a national party, and that you won't give up on us, and that we can continue finding ways to work together so that we will have the party today and for the future that we need now. And so I appreciate you all being here, and thank you for sharing with us. And we'll see you in the next workshops and the next program. Please go to the fundraiser if you're able to.
Hold on, Daryl. Just my fault. We are actually scheduled for another 15 minutes here.
Oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
cool.
I looked at the schedule incorrectly, and I thought we only had an hour. We actually have an extra 15. So if you want to take a few more questions, we could totally do that.
We can definitely do that. And we're going to go back to the ones that Elizabeth and Nissan, and then I think Justin was just on the stack. I do want to, while I pause though, I was going to give a commercial. So I'm going to give the commercial and then go back into the question. So the commercial is, if you are a person who identifies as a person of Latinx background, we invite you to reach out to become a part of the Latinx community. If you are a person who identifies with the lavender, gay, les, bi, trans, a non-binary, same gender loving, in that continuum, if you find yourselves in that is who you are, please reach out to the Lavender Caucus. If you are a person of Black or African-American descent, please reach out to us at the National Black Caucus and join us. We need you. If you find yourself being 35 and under, and you want to be a part of the Young Equal Socialists, please reach out to them and do so. And if you are a woman, by any definition of being a woman, you are welcome to join and be a part of the Women's Caucus. I think I covered all of this. If I missed a caucus, please forgive me. But we invite you to be a part of the caucuses for a couple of reasons. One, because the experiences that we have from those different perspectives are important and often don't always reach the national level in the way it should. And so the caucuses are here to help make sure that happens. And also, if you're having experiences that are challenging for you, we want to be able to be advocates and supporters of you wherever you may be as well. There is a disability caucus that's forming. There are folks that have been organizing around an elders caucus, and I know that there has been a Muslim caucus conversation and also a Native or an Indigenous peoples caucus conversation over time. So if you're interested in any of those areas, please do share that with us as well. You can reach out to us on the steering committee and say you're interested, and we will point you in the right direction. So now we've got 11 minutes. Those are my commercials for now. And so I'm going to go back to Elizabeth, because I know she had her hand up earlier, and we'll go to Elizabeth and then come back to Nissan, Joseph, and Whitney.
Yeah, we definitely need an Indigenous caucus. We definitely need a talk about UBI, and we definitely need to go to this other, I think it's tomorrow, where we're going to be talking about proportional representation instead of, and ranked choice voting, and we need to come up with a format like the platform party has, but for the national committee, where every whereas has to have some kind of authority pointing to the statistics or whatever backs them up. So it's not just somebody's personal opinion unless they're an expert in the field. And where the wherefore will come up with a series of possible solutions to the problem everybody could do a ranked choice vote on. Thank you, over.
So Elizabeth, before you go, let me ask a question, because that's been said, a couple of things have been said a couple of times here. And so I have a slight pushback, but I may not need to, but I'm going to ask the question. So sometimes I may not have a legitimate authority, quote unquote, who defines that. That's the first part of that, is who defined the authority, right? But something may not feel right to me. It may, as a person of color, I might say, that just, it's not sitting well with me. There's something about that is troubling and problematic. From my background, from my experience, it just doesn't sit well with me. I don't have a educated or educational or research-based response to it, but that is where I differ in this perspective that we're putting out. For instance, talking about socialism, I may have a different perspective on that as an African-American person than some other folks would do, and I may not have research to back up why I feel my community responds a certain way. How would that be validated if everyone had to come up with research? And we don't have to know it. I just want to throw that out as a thinking point for us when we talk about people backing things up with sort of from an educational model that is a model that doesn't necessarily come from all walks of life, just as a thought. Nisa.
Yes. So another thing, this is just throwing out the possible solution from workshopping with some groups I've been in. What are your thoughts on having like a standard like set of morals and like values and like more like a constitution, and then basing off all our other that we could like base all our other decisions on based on that? Because it seems like, you know, there's two ways of looking at it. There's either you're all in about making decisions based on what you're looking for, or making decisions based on what the community is as a whole. So if I think it's a good idea if we just have, so it came out after long discussions, like if we all just focus on a set of values first, and then be like, okay, we want these values, we want these outcomes, right? And then checking our consensus based on those set of values to see if they, get us to those things. Well, what are your thoughts on that? I hope that came out correctly.
I don't have well, other people, does anyone else have a thought or response to that? The crickets are wearing us out. Go ahead, Lou. You're on mute.
Hold on.
So Stephen, while Lou's unmuted, Stephen says the 10 key values may be providing that thing you're talking about, Nissan. Lou? We can't, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you.
How's this? Any better?
Much better.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your patience, folks. I agree with what was just said, that the 4 pillars and the 10 key values are that structure which provides us guidance in making those much more timely decisions around policies and practices. Certainly those of us in the Green Party should be familiar with those and how they apply to the local issues. The great discussion around consensus is one that's I think waxes eternal. But I think we need to keep in mind the protection of minority rights and the ability of not folks to change policy, but perhaps to keep us from going in the wrong direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Whitney, were you going to say something? If not, we'll go ahead to Jasmine. Whitney, if you want to, you'll just put your hand back up. Go ahead, Jasmine.
Thank you for giving me an opportunity to ask my question. Does the Green Party take a stance on decolonization so that way there could be efforts made to reduce the reliance on respectability politics within this party?
So that is a very interesting question, and I think it is something that is a part of why we're having this conversation today in terms of how we deal with decolonization. A lot of the ways in which we operate come from the colonial perspectives that we were given. They're embedded in the Constitution of the U.S. They're embedded into our reaction to that is also comes from a colonial perspective of responding to colonial perspectives, right? So there's a way that we have to unpack and dig into all of that. So I think there's work to be done in that area. So yeah, some Whitney said that was a nice question, Jasmine.
Courtney, if people were curious about why I would ask such a question, you brought up the different caucuses, the LGBTQIA caucus and the Black caucus, and then it turned into a series of other caucuses that should be listed, definitely the Indigenous caucus. But I think some people were missing the point of why you were saying that marginalized groups need to be heard. And so I feel like if we had resources of decolonization, people would be more mindful or have an opportunity to be more mindful in the future. Thank you.
Very good. And thank you for that clarity, because the chat moves too fast for me. And so if there were comments about that I didn't catch, so thank you for throwing that in. That is a good point. So yeah, there's the reasons why we exist is, if again, the very obvious reason why the caucuses exist is that we still exist inside the United States, which is still a very racist, sexist, homophobic environment, ageist in many different ways. It's embedded in the culture of who we are as a nation, and so we have to keep working very hard on anti-racism in all of its forms, all anti-supremacy, anti-white supremacy, particularly in all of it. And in my research, which is in othering, and my doctoral work that I'm doing right now, I have said within my context of my spiritual background is that white supremacy also comes out of Christian supremacy. And if you want to know more about that, we can talk about that another day. But it all, that manifest destiny, all that stuff comes from people saying they have the right to go and take whatever they want to take. And if the people that are there that don't believe what you believe, you can make them permanent slaves, right? And that's where that whole concept of slavery in the way it became here was different. So there's a lot of ways, and I want to this is not a conversation about getting into all that, but in the aspect of, aspect of decolonization, that is one of those aspects that we need to look at as a party. Where do these things show up for us as a party in our processes, in our bylaws, in our rules and procedures, even in our platform? Where are these things embedded where we didn't even know it, right? And I'm not a person that likes to say, oh, everyone's at fault for it. These things have happened because we live in this particular country at this particular time. And we have to always work to undo those things that are marginalizing to people that get marginalized. And it's really easy to do it. I was telling one of my best friends who is non-binary that, there's so many things jokes that we used to make and things that we used to do. We used to dress up as Native American folk for Halloween, and we can't do that anymore because people's cultures are not costumes, right? We got to be mindful of saying things like holy cow, because that's offensive to a whole segment of folks where cows are sacred and holy. So the things that we've made common and jokes and normal are things that also may be offensive and harmful to other people. So we got to do some work, and it's easy to say, well, can't we just say what we want to say? And just get over it, and just don't know that I don't mean it offensively. But why not have to do the work to find better ways to communicate that aren't harmful to people, right? So anyway, that's my little soapbox, I guess, to some degree on some of that. But the Green Party, and what I say to people all the time, the Green Party is not perfect. People come to the Green Party from where they came from, how they live their lives with who they are, and that is what we are. We come from where we come from, and we bring all of ourselves to the party, and we still have work to do. We are not perfect. We may be misogynistic at times and not even know that we were doing it. Someone has to point it out to us, and our job is to say, oh, wow, I didn't realize I was doing that. How can I do it differently? How can we be better? How can we be the example and not fight for, I didn't mean that, and that's not what I meant. So, but okay, but that's not what you meant, but that's what happened. So I think we have to figure out how to be better together. So I'm going to leave it there. Margaret Elizabeth, you want to take us out?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Daryl. That was a great presentation. Thank you, everybody who joined us today and participated in the conversation. Personally, I think this kind of conversation should happen more frequently amongst the party. It really does suck that we can only do it, via the annual meeting once a year, but I'm glad we were all here. I look forward to seeing you all in next workshops later on down the road, perhaps at the movie tonight, Healing Us, which is about Medicare for all. And I strongly encourage you all to be there to watch it. I'll be seeing you throughout the rest of the convention. I know Daryl will be seeing you as well. And I am looking forward to seeing your happy, smiling faces when we get to our next presentation. Thank you all for being here, and I will see you all soon. Cheers,
Thanks,
everyone.
and we'll be in touch.
Oh, also, don't forget. So this will be recorded and it will be on the Zoom. On our YouTube channel, probably within the day. So maybe by this evening, actually, be out there. So if you missed any part of it, you can check it out later on today. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.
Take care.